Hello everybody and welcome back to the Danish Woodsman. If you follow my channel, you will have seen that I recently did a video of this. This is the Zero Tolerance 0542 CF, and in that video I did say a lot of positive things about this knife. But in this video I would like to address some of the darker sides which I failed to mention in that video. However, with that being said, I still absolutely love this knife. I love and recommend this knife highly. And I will emphasize that by quickly summing up my last video by saying the three things I absolutely love about this knife before we jump into the dark side. So the three things I absolutely love about this knife is, first off, is the overall design. And by design I mean the aesthetics, the knife's overall profile and the handle ergonomics. Secondly, I love the build quality. The build quality on this knife is simply superb. The material choices, the titanium, carbon fiber and S35 VN steel is awesome materials and put together very nicely by CT. Thirdly, I absolutely love the action. The action on this knife is definitely a highlight for me. As you can see, it has, I can just go ahead and close it, it has a lightning fast opening and a nice drop shot action, which really shows how smooth the KVT ball bearing system can be. So yeah, I really love the action. But with those three things out of the way, let's jump into some of the more negative or dark sides of the Zero Tolerance 0542 CF. So guys, for the more negative things I failed to mention in my last video, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the pocket clip, which I gave some critique in my last video, but I didn't mention all the things I maybe should have said. So this is the pocket clip that the knives come standard with. This is a deep carry pocket clip, or at least they say so from CT, and that's what we're gonna discuss. So the first thing, oh sorry, I have some things going on here. So the first thing is that this pocket clip isn't really that deep carry, because as you can see, the screws which are used to screw the pocket clip to the frame of the knife prevent this from going all the way to the end of the prevents your pockets from going all the way up here and clipping to the end of the clip, which means that you actually have this part from my index finger and up sticking out of your pocket. So you can definitely argue that this is not a completely deep carry pocket clip. It doesn't allow complete deep carry. Second of all, people complain that the CT logo here kind of does not allow you to kind of go incognito with this knife. People would prefer to not have the CT logo on you, because if you're carrying this knife and people catch a look of that CT logo, they will definitely be knowing what you're packing. And if it wasn't there, you could assume that it was just a flashlight or some other things or whatever. Thirdly, I said that this in my video that this is a two-way reversible pocket clip, or an ambidextrous pocket clip, which means that the clip can be screwed to this side or the other side. But what people would have liked to see also was that it was four-way reversible, so to speak, so it could also be mounted on here, because right now as it is, this knife can only be carried this way, which is tip up, and some people prefer to be carrying tip down. And the reason some people prefer to carry it tip down like this is because some people with this knife has complained that it can be a potential danger if you are carrying it tip up in the pocket, because if you by chance have a let me just go ahead and see if I can do it. Have a misleaded or a accidental deployment, and the knife sits like this in your pocket, and you're going down to reach for the knife or something else, you can cut yourself really bad on a knife. I however have never had this knife accidentally deployed in my pocket, but I can definitely see the argument here, and it would be nice of CT to give people the option for a tip down carry. So second of all, related to the pocket clip, or not to the pocket clip, but the pocket carry, is another potential danger people feel that there are with this knife, and that is the fact that the blade, I don't know, the knife is centered, so if it doesn't look like it's centered, it's probably because I'm holding it wrongly. But the tip of the blade is very, very close to the end of the handle, as you can see. And that means that some people, I don't know how, but they are saying that they can push their finger down here, and when they're reaching down in the pocket, they can actually catch their finger on the tip of the blade, even though the knife is completely closed. So some people would have liked to see a bit more handle, a longer handle, or at least a larger portion of handle between the end of the blade and the end of the handle. So that was the issues related to the pocket clip. Let's jump into the issues related to whether or not this knife is ambidextrous or not. So guys, in my video I said that this knife is 100% and fully ambidextrous, and I did that from a couple of reasons, or for a couple of reasons. First off, the deployment of the knife I thought was ambidextrous because the deployment is based on this flipper tab here, which you can obviously press with both your left and your right hand. Second of all, the pocket clip could be reversed, so it could be carried left or right, and that made me say that this knife was ambidextrous, but that is obviously not the case, and this is not a complaint directly directed towards this knife, but more a general way of viewing knife and whether or not you can define ambidextrous. But obviously people who are right-handed will have a large advantage when it comes to one-handed closing of the knife, because our thumb naturally falls on the frame lock here, so we can easily press it with our right hand. But if you are left-handed, let's see if I can show you, it definitely becomes much more difficult to close it than if you are right-handed, and that's why some people argue that this knife is not fully ambidextrous. Obviously that is not a thing that only applies to this knife, but every frame lock or liner lock knife for that matter. But that was the ambidextrous side of the issue, and I actually would like to talk a bit more about the lock bar here. So the lock bar issue with this, or the issue related to opening the knife in connection with the lock bar, is when you are to deploy this knife, you obviously do it with the flipper tab here. And if you have I believe if you have smaller hands, I have quite large hands, but if you have smaller hands, my natural grip when flipping this knife is actually to hold it like this and then just press the flipper tab. And the issue with this can be, if you're not aware of it, I have smaller hands, you can end up placing a lot of pressure up here, where my index finger here, which is the lock bar, and that means that you can, or with your, I don't know what this finger is called, whatever, and you can put a lot of pressure on the lock bar here with your finger, which means that you'll pressure the knife and lock it, or create more friction in the opening mechanism, and thereby forcing a failed deployment. And that's something people definitely are not fond of, that you can prevent this knife from opening by pressing or putting enough force here. For me, it's not an issue. My natural grip for this knife when opening is like this, so you can see I'm pressing here, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the lock bar, so I have never had any issue with opening this knife. So that was the lock bar. And now I would like to talk more about the opening mechanism, and more specifically the flipper tab here. So what do people complain about related to the flipper tab, you might ask? Well, this is the only way of deploying this knife. This is the way the knife is intended to be deployed, and therefore it is a very important part of the knife. And CT has definitely done some work in order to ensure that you can deploy it nice and easy. It has a strong detent ball, and they have put super nice jimping up here to give you a good grip when flipping it open. The issue, however, is that this flipper tab is very small. It is not small, but it is kind of fidgety. to find. And people's argument are, if you are in a high stress situation, let's say you have to cut some cheesecake really, really fast, will you be able, a kind of a panicky and high stress stage of your mind, be able to get this knife out of your pocket and find this tiny flipper tab in order to press it open and cut the cheesecake or whatever? And some people say that you cannot rely on yourself in a high stress situation to find this small flipper tab and flip the knife open. They would have preferred something else, something that was easier to open, or maybe gave you more options than just having this small flipper tab to press on. However, that is a perfectly valid argument. I can definitely see that some people think that they can't rely on themselves to find this small flipper tab to press on in a high stress situation. However, if you are carrying this knife every day, you will build up some significant muscle memory, which means you won't have to put any thought whatsoever into opening this knife. It will be complete muscle memory, and you don't even have to think about it. So if you're carrying this knife a lot, you will learn or teach yourself how to open this knife without even thinking about it. So that's the issue that can be fixed by simply carrying the knife, I would argue anyway. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about the pivot. So the pivot of this knife was actually something that really drove me towards it. I really like the aesthetic of the pivot here. Some people complain, and this is not a functional complaint at this point, this is just cosmetically. Some people complain it's kind of gimmicky and sort of give this knife this gas station vibe. I don't think that by any extent. And they think that it looks sort of like a car rim. That was the aesthetic part. However, this pivot was actually one of the things that drove me towards this knife. I really enjoy the aesthetics of the pivot. You can really see the nice action of the knife there. But the thing that can bother people about the pivot is obviously the fact that it is free spinning, which means that when you put a hex torque into this side in order to unscrew it, to disassemble and maintain your knife, you will find that you're not going anywhere because this side will be spinning freely, and that means you'll have to put a torque screw or Torx tool into this side and this side into this side to hold this into the position while you unscrew this side. And that is definitely, they could have gone with a conventional pivot which was not free spinning, which would definitely have made it easier to disassemble or maintain. But I have disassembled and maintained this knife many times, and it is definitely not that big of an issue. And by the way, a pro tip is, if you get the knife for the first time and you have to disassemble and maintain it, it can be a really good idea to either soak it in hot water or just heat the knife off slightly or whatsoever, ever so slightly with a hairdryer or something, to help loosen up the screws. But the free spinning pivot is an issue for some, but for most of you guys with basic knowledge and skills in maintaining tools would definitely have no issue in my mind with disassembling and maintaining your tool, even though it has a free spinning pivot. So guys, that was some of the points that people have to complain about related to this knife. I hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, I still absolutely love this knife. I highly recommend it if you like it, which is kind of a stupid argument anyway, but a lot of things about this knife is stupid. Its size, its profile, its action. So if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. And now I think it's definitely time to go outside and get your boots dirty, and I'll see you out there. Peace out.